All right, hi. Welcome to the very first episode of YMI Talking. I could not be more excited. This podcast is going to talk to influential people, business people who are all based in the Lehigh Valley. We want to learn what they did to be successful, what they're doing now, what they've learned from their past mistakes. It's going to be awesome, and I cannot wait. And I cannot wait for this very first guest. He is someone who is near and dear to my heart. He is someone that I have looked up to and aspired to be like. And he also happens to be my father. So without further ado, we're going to kick this off and we will dive into the conversation with Jim Honochick. Hold on one second while I cue up our awesome intro. Here we go.
Welcome to YMI Talking, a podcast where the guests are so good, you'll wonder why the host is even talking. In each episode, you will hear one of the leaders of the Lehigh Valley's vibrant business hub. They will tell you the keys to their success, the mistakes they've made, and what they have in store for the future. Here is the host of YMI Talking, from YMI Insurance, Jimi Honochick.
All right, I am the host of YMI Talking. I'm going to give you a quick background on our guest today. His name is Jim Honochick. You will notice my name is Jimi Honochick. It is very close. It's very confusing for people we work with. But my dad is an incredible human being and someone, like I said, who has inspired me to be who I am. His career begins in Atlanta, Georgia, where he worked for Siemens. It then moved him to Mississippi, where I spent a couple formative years. And then finally, he gave it all in. He turned over the corporate job for life in a small town with a small business, which he has grown to be quite an impressive business. He's quite an impressive businessman. I don't want to steal his thunder, so I'm going to turn it over to our guest today, Jim Honochick. Dad, welcome to Why Am I Talking?
Thank you, and thank you for that over-the-top intro. Appreciate it.
I mean, at 6'6", I do think you are over the top.
Yeah, at 6'6", in most crowds, I am over the top.
So, I mean, what I want to do on this show is really get to know people, get to know them personally, and get to know them from their business perspective. Okay. So, for me, I guess, started off with how you got started. Where Atlanta, I believe, but tell everyone sort of your story.
Well, back it up a little bit. I'm from Lehigh Valley, born and raised in Allentown. Went to Allentown Central Catholic, and that's where I met my wife, your mother. That was 46 years ago. And coming out of college out of Villanova with a degree in engineering, applied for jobs and was going to be hired by a company that eventually got taken over by Siemens, and for the Boston sales office. I was an engineer, but I liked to sell, so it was kind of a natural technical sales. And unfortunately, the week before I was supposed to start, they canceled the training program. I was actually in Vermont with some friends, got a call saying, "We're really sorry, I don't have a job for you, best of luck." And I had already turned down all the other companies that interviewed me at Villanova.
Oh, well, that's fun.
So yeah, so they said, drop off your company car in Boston, turn in the keys to your apartment, and best of luck, we'll take care of the bills.
Wow.
So yeah, went back to Allentown and explained to my mom and dad the situation and started digging up my resume to start throwing it back out. After about 3 weeks, I got a call from them and said, there may be a position in Atlanta. Are you interested? Absolutely. I'm unemployed. I'm a college grad. I'm all over it. So I went down to Atlanta, interviewed, and it was engineering, which is what I didn't want to do, just strict engineering, but I wanted a job. So I spent a year designing electrical equipment. And after a year, they moved me out of that into marketing, and that was a lot more fun. Construction marketing, working with the sales force, putting together construction projects, the electrical systems for them. I like that. And then I got tapped for international and ended up spending 7 years in international. And that had a couple effects on me. It was great. I got to see the world, but I got to see it without my family. So I would, in fact, my first trip out of the country happened to be on the first Mother's Day, shortly after you were born, and that's not really
I'm sure that went well.
Yeah, exactly. And I apologize, I had to leave on that Sunday, but again, I got to travel the world which was really rewarding, but there was also something missing because I was leaving you guys back. Talking to my wife, when I got back to the hotel at night. Fast forward a few more years, and they asked me to take a product manager's position in Jackson, Mississippi. I did that, and while the international travel was reduced, domestic travel was really up. And I had a seminal moment, one of those things that kind of sticks in your mind and makes you think about your life direction. I was getting on a plane in Jackson, Mississippi, and we always had Dallas-based flights, flew Delta. And as I get on, the flight attendant said, "Good morning, Mr. Honochick." And I realized I had been with that flight crew as many days I've been with my family over the past month.
Wow. So the people you're traveling with, you're starting to learn better than your family almost.
Yeah, I'm seeing them going out in the mornings. So that got me thinking, is this what I want to be doing? As you know, as maybe some of the watchers know, my father was a major league umpire. And so it took him away every summer. So from April to really the end of September, beginning of October, he was on the road. And unless he was working Yankees games or Orioles games where he was somewhat close to Allentown, I didn't get to see him much during the summer. And I didn't want that for my kids growing up. I wanted to be able to have more time with them in their lives. So my father-in-law had been in insurance. My two brother-in-laws were in insurance, had agencies. And just one of the holidays, I'm sitting talking to them, and they said, have you ever thought about insurance? It's a really good career. The more I learned about it, the more I realized I could be flexible in my hours. So if my sons had something going on at the school, I could run over to that, spend an hour or 2 hours there, run back to the office. And if I had to work till 10 or 11 at night, not a big deal. I was still able to have that kind of work-life balance. And it really was a work-life balance.
I don't picture the corporate world of the 1990s really letting you do that.
No, even things like joining Rotary. I joined Rotary when I came to Stroudsburg and enjoyed my years in Rotary. I had considered that in Jackson, had a good friend, my next door neighbor, who was very active in Rotary, and I couldn't commit to, let's say, those 2 hours once a week. An hour and a half for lunch and 15 minutes back and forth. So this was giving me the freedom to grow as a person, grow in the community, and be more involved.
No, that's great. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
The one thing that caught my attention was your father. So Jim Honochick, like you said, he was a famous umpire. What was that like? Less so him being gone, but more so growing up in a small community like the Lehigh Valley with a big presence like your father, Jim Honochick. What was that experience like?
So, I've heard other children of famous people have the same experience, and that is he was still my dad. So I didn't think of him as that much bigger presence as everybody else did, other than that he would be recognized. We would go shopping together and somebody would recognize him. We'd be in downtown Allentown and somebody would recognize him. One thing that stood out to me was he was very involved in the community. And back in those days, he umpired from 49 through 73. The World Series, you got to watch it live and that was it. And there wasn't a lot of instant replay. So Major League Baseball put out a series of films. And these are 16 millimeter films they would ship to people on their list, and my dad would get them every year. So it would be the films of the World Series condensed down, and film of the All-Star Game. And my dad would show these films at a lot of community events, whether it was at our church, St. Thomas More. There would be a father-son night there, and there would be my dad introing the film and talking about the film. Good Shepherd Home. He did Lions Club. And I would, when he was doing that during the winter, I would go with him. And that always stuck out as something you can be somewhat famous, but what are you doing in your community? What are you doing to give back? And it didn't click at the time, but it kind of planted the seed. I saw him doing that and saw there was an importance, and he got a lot out of it. And I think I did too for my life watching that.
So it's really, I don't know what the right word is, really interesting, really strange to hear you tell this story, because I have a distinct memory in Mississippi of going to turkey donation, I think. And it felt like I think we're at a soup kitchen.
We were, yep.
And yeah, you taking me there, and I can still recall that. And without a doubt, that played a role in sort of my commitment to community. So seeing it handed down from my grandfather to you, and then from you to me is a really interesting link.
Yeah, you don't, one doesn't know what one doesn't know. Until you experience that kind of involvement and you see that it's really rewarding, and that a lot of us are very fortunate. I think it's important to have that as kind of a rudder in your life.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that is taking me down another path, which volunteering and giving back is something that's critically important to me, and I know for a fact that I got that from you. Mm-hmm. So over the course of your career, what have been some of your favorite ventures that you've been involved with? Sort of where are you now, and what do you hope to do more of?
Really interesting. So again, coming to Stroudsburg, Rotary was big, and our Rotary Club, I belonged to both the Rotary Club of Stroudsburg and then of the Smithfields. It was about doing things for the community. There was a whole variety of things that we were involved in, really rewarding. Mom, when we came to Stroudsburg, was also looking for something to get involved in the community, and she did Meals on Wheels for years. And I think she dragged you and your brother along on Meals on Wheels.
Oh yeah, I remember.
The ones I remember at Notre Dame High School, I ended up being president of the Booster Club. That was fun and rewarding because I got a kind of a free hand to what can we do to raise money for athletics at Notre Dame. Small parochial schools don't have a big budget. So this was a fun way of doing it, and together with Jeff Brown, we put together years where we were pulling in some serious money for the athletic programs, and we were able to get stuff done at the athletic fields. Felt really good.
So
now
I don't want to interrupt, but I'm sure a lot of the people who are listening want to do similar things, whether it's for their school or for an organization that they're in, and raise that sort of money. So what did you guys do that you found was successful in doing that?
Unfortunately, it's something there are a lot of today, but we did golf tournaments. But the push was, for a successful golf tournament to raise money, you got to have sponsors. And we had a group of parents who had no problem going out and asking. And when people saw that it was a really good event, there was great recognition. One of the things we had were all these student athletes write a letter of thanks to a player. Little things like that really got a relationship going, and it meant there was that kind of stickiness that people wanted to keep on playing. They had a fun day. We had great food. We had great events out on the course, and side games they could do, putting contests. People wanted to come back, so that was a lot of fun. I will say,
go ahead.
I was saying, I was going to shift off of this in case you wanted to ask a question about it yet.
No, I was going to say, I think that's something that gets missed a lot, whether it's in business or fundraising. It's the value that you provide the other party. A lot of times I think we get really sucked into a me mentality, and how is this relationship going to be good for me? And because it's good for me, I'm going to pursue it really hard. But I think what you've said here is that that's less what's important. Providing value to the people who are involved, whether it is that handwritten letter or having great food and events, that can go a lot farther than you just focused on yourself.
Yeah, people like to be appreciated, And especially if they're giving of themselves, in this case, giving of their treasure, you want to acknowledge that. You don't want to take that for granted. And that's what we really tried to make sure we communicated to them, how much we appreciated their involvement, the donation of their treasure, their time also for all the volunteers that work there. That's what makes a successful fundraiser. I will say, so that's probably 10 years or more we've been done that. The most recent cause, and I say that over the past 7-8 years, has been for Second Harvest Food Bank of Lehigh Valley.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about Second Harvest, what they do, and why you've chosen them.
Great organization. They provide food and supplemental food for residents in, I think it's 6 counties, and it pretty much matches our footprint. So it's Lehigh, Northampton, Carbon, Wayne, Pike, and I'm missing a few in there. But an amazing facility that everything from backpack buddies. So, we think about kids and kids who are in poor households who don't have the resource to provide meals all the time. They may be taken care of with meals during the school year, but what happens when school lets out? Backpack Buddies is providing them providing their families on a regular basis that food basis for those kids when they're not in school. Another one was, it was also a program for seniors, because a lot of seniors get to be shut-ins, and we saw that with Meals on Wheels. This was supplemental food that will be brought to them for Meals on Wheels so that they have something in their cabinets, in their refrigerators when they need it and when they can't get out.
Yeah, food scarcity is such an issue, and it's great to have found an organization. And we've met Allison. I know she's come to events that we've had over at Second Harvest, and you can tell just from your conversations with her the passion that she brings to it. And it's great that there's organizations like that in the area.
Yeah, Allison's app's pretty special, and really all the people in organizations like that really are special. They're doing it because they care.
Yeah, absolutely. And so your ability to help organizations like that comes from your business. Yep. And so I'm going to go back to the business. Talk to me about coming into Yutz Merkel as it was at the time. So you've done very well in your corporate life. You've had a lot of success. You've climbed the ladder. And now you're moving to, I can say this because I grew up in it, Podunk, Pennsylvania, in a small little office building. Tell me about, I'm sure, the existential dread you had, and sort of what was your priority when you came in?
The existential dread was really just ego, and it required an ego check. For probably 4 years, I had worked at Siemens headquarters operation in Atlanta. When I finally got my own office, I remember they sent the decorating crew up with books. What artwork would I like? What type of furniture would I like? Where would I like it put? And that's an ego boost. I mean, it is, you're feeling pretty good at the end of that day. And when I bought Yutz Merkel, we were in a little converted house on North Cortlandt Street across from a gas station right next to the railroad tracks as the train travel was actually picking up. So when trains would come through, it was a joke in the office. People couldn't hear us. They could hear the train. So it'd be just, hold on for a second. I'll be right back with you. Honestly, that took less than a year to say, wait a minute, I'm pursuing something I really want, get the ego out of the way, and let's just move on and be successful with it. What was the second part of that question?
And so what was your priority when you you step out of the large corporate structure into a small business? Like, what's your top priority coming into that business?
For me, it was learning the industry because I knew very little of the industry. I knew that the agency had some issues that needed correcting. I was going to fall back on the corporate training that I had. Put a business plan together. I pitched the largest carrier in terms of our book size, and that was YMI Insurance, because they were taking a risk on me. A guy with no insurance experience. I'd been licensed less than a year when I actually bought the agency. I had worked in it for about 6 months. It was get to know my craft. If I'm going to be successful, I got to know my craft. And so that was really it, was honing those skills while I was learning the community, because we moved here. We moved into our house in South Stroudsburg September of '95, and January 1 is when I bought the agency. So get to learn the community, get to meet people, go out of the way, network that you are very good at. I am less interested in networking at this point. I don't know why. But
which I have said this to you before, blows my mind, because anyone who has ever met you, whether it's my friends or family friends, has nothing but positive takeaways about their relationship with you. You can meet someone for 15 minutes and they feel like they've known you forever. So I find it so strange that you hate networking.
I don't hate networking. I think I don't hate networking.
Well, talk me through, because this is something I struggle with currently. That balance between running the business, learning your craft, because I'm still under 2 years here, and spending time with your family and developing a network outside of work. Like, talk to me how you were able to balance that and how you got through that time period.
I have an amazing partner. My wife knew there was going to be a commitment of time. My commitment to her and the family was I would make it work during the day. So again, programs at school, I was going to be there for. But I may not be home for dinner, or if I'm home for dinner, I may be going back to the office. It was before the days of remote working. You actually needed to be in the office.
Yeah.
And late nights, so I would say a solid partner who has a common vision, and then the ability to figure out where you can fit the time in to get it done. It's a challenge, but it pays off.
Yeah. And all right, to that point of paying off. So talk to me about the state of the agency when you bought it and maybe where you took it.
So the agency had a good base of clients. I like that, but had some quality issues that the carriers look at, and that is profitability of the book. In other words, every carrier actuarially has a percentage of your volume that should be in claims. The agency was far over the top on where claims should have been, and part of that was you got to underwrite business. So when a risk comes in, if you're dealing with 4 accidents in 5 years, statistics are you're going to have more accidents over the next couple of years. So
right.
That may be a standard rated carrier or a higher risk carrier. So it's placing the business. I've always said there's a home for any risk. So the joke about knife sharpening and gunpowder packing in the same room, there's a carrier who will write that, but it's going to be really expensive because
right.
the chance of a loss is very high. As opposed to someone who is very conscious about how they drive, they don't have any accidents, they don't have any violations. Doesn't mean they can't. It's an accident, and that's what we're in the business for, is to pay claims. They're going to get the preferred rate. So years ago, I spoke at Monroe County Technical Center. Basically, it was VOTEC, and the conversation was insurance. But to make it interesting, it was a conversation. These were all young people that are 17 and 18,
right.
getting cars, and they see how expensive it is. And my message to them was, how you live directly affects how expensive it is to live. And what I meant by that is, if you're going to get speeding tickets, if you're acting more risky, your costs of living are going to go up. If you're careful with what you do, you can control your costs. And for a young person with a limited income, that can be significant. One of my sons, who I won't mention,
That's where I was going.
issues, moved to California. And when he moved to California, was living in Los Angeles County, because of his past driving record, was looking at a coverage rate for comp and collision, I mean, really a good coverage plan of probably close to $20,000 a year. And this was a Honda Civic.
Is that really what I was looking at?
Yeah.
And it was a Honda Fit, by the way.
Honda Fit, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is not an extravagant car, but it reflected their loss experience.
Yeah.
And that's what Carrie's saying. Los Angeles County is very expensive anyway, but I can guarantee it would have been a whole lot less, maybe a couple grand a year.
Yeah.
If he didn't have those driving issues at the time. He's much better now.
And so to go back, you inherited a book that maybe had more of those on them than they should have had.
Absolutely, yeah.
So your priority, I guess, was to sort of clean up the book at that point?
Yep. Get the risks rated correctly.
Right.
And make sure that if someone is on auto getting a pleasure rate, that they're not driving to New York City every day.
Right.
That's a commute rate. And so there was a lot of that going in, and talking to clients and having some tough meetings with them to say, you're rated wrong, and I've got to rate, based on our conversation, I've got to rate you right. And I understand that may cause you to shop around, but I've got to do this. And it has been a successful formula. I'm in 27 years now, and from the original book, we've grown it 5.5 times. So
5.5 times.
Yeah.
So let's recap. You come in and you start having difficult conversations left and right with clients.
Yep.
And now they're shopping.
Yep.
So your entire livelihood is bleeding at a higher rate than it could have. And you take that and you grow it 5.5 times.
Yeah, over 25, 26 years, yeah.
Still, I'm not a mathematician, but that's a good growth rate.
It is.
I think you beat the S&P 500 over that period of time.
The thing right now is every one of the team here understands proper placement. What our focus is right now is how do we delight customers? What's the customer experience? When they call in, they don't know insurance. I don't know dentistry. That's why I go to a dentist. But I want to have a good experience when I go to the dentist. I want them to have a good experience when they call here. They're going to get customer service that delights them, and that's going to keep them coming back. We're advisors. The value we add is to be able to have that meeting, put a plan together which is very competitive or maybe saving them money, and point out where their exposures are. If they don't want to cover their exposures, that's okay. We understand it. But our job is to be the advisor and their partner.
That's really interesting. That's a great way of thinking about it. I think a lot of people view insurance agents as a transactional business,
they do.
Where I'm coming to you, give me the best price you got. But you're saying you go above and beyond that. And I kind of think of it like let's say Chick-fil-A, right? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I'm going to be honest, and I might get a lot of shit for this, but like a Chick-fil-A sandwich is a fried chicken sandwich. I prefer a Popeye chicken sandwich. But between the two, I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A almost every time. And that's because the customer service there is on another level. And you're saying that essentially the same thing, I think, that if you delight customers, that's the word you used, and I think that's a powerful word. If you delight customers, you're going to keep them coming back, right?
Yeah. Think in your own life, as a customer, the experiences you have that are over the top great, you want to go back there. You continue to go because you enjoyed the transaction, you know it's going to be good. You can buy insurance in a lot of places. It's a matter of what kind of support and what type of experience you get, and that's the value we bring to it.
Yeah.
Being consultants and advisors.
Sorry, I'm getting excited. This is all coming to me as we're talking. I don't know the difference in price between a Popeye's chicken sandwich and a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. I
I don't
don't
either.
care. I go to Chick-fil-A.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so would you say of all the things that you've done to grow the business 5.5 times, that emphasis on customer service and delighting the customer is what's been the most critical to that success?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, providing that customer experience. Yes, if there is one single most important, that's it.
Yeah, that's great. So how do you go about implementing that? What sort of things are important to you without getting too buried in the weeds of insurance? Like what delights a customer in your mind?
The thing I've challenged the team over the years is just use the golden rule. If this was you calling in, what experience do you want? And put yourself in the customer's shoes. What is that client looking for when they call? Did they have a bad day? Let them unwind about the day. And give them the experience that that our team would want if they were calling somewhere. That's the golden rule.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And I did not go in the weeds on that.
No, I appreciate that. All right, so we're definitely running low on time, I would say.
Yep.
I would say I would ask you, what advice would you give to someone who maybe is in the same shoes that you were, right? They whether they're a career switcher or they're launching a new job, like someone who is at the, let's call it the beginning of their career and is now looking at this vast unknown future. Like what would your advice be to them to have the same level of success that you've had?
Start with a plan. Know what you want to achieve.
You're a planner.
Measure your achievements as you go. But I think most importantly, and it kind of goes with the measure, is I think often we, especially as business owners, can get down on any given day. Stuff hits the fan and it's not what we plan to do that day and it just looks glum. I believe it's really important to stop and look back 1 year and say, where was I a year ago and what have I accomplished? Because if you do that, you can have a down day where you're feeling really lousy about the business. If you do that, you're going to see how much you've accomplished and let that be what builds you up to move forward. Fight off the fatigue, know you got a plan, know there are going to be disappointments and failures, learn from the failures and keep moving forward.
It's funny when you say that. So I recently had a post on LinkedIn where I said exactly that. Like, look back at this last year and think about what you've accomplished. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. And I thought I was so smart and creative and coming up with a really good post, but I think I probably stole that from you somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was with another agency owner recently, and she was talking about, how difficult some of the areas are that she's working through. And I asked her, I said, have you done that? She goes, a couple of years ago, you told me to do that. And she, as we're talking, and she's looking back over the past year, she's been killing it. She's been doing a lot of great things. So you need to do that just to reinforce the fact that you are moving forward.
Yeah, it's important and something that I take to heart now.
Yeah.
All right, so with the last few minutes that we have, I want to do something. Are you okay if we do a segment called Kick It Up a Notch, brought to you by our sponsors, Notch Modern Kitchen?
Absolutely. Great
so
restaurant.
Notch is one of my favorite restaurants in the Valley. They do these custom cocktails. The food is incredible. Definitely check them out if you haven't. And then let's kick things up a notch. So first question. Are you ready?
Yep.
It's Friday night. You have had a long week in the office. Annoying vice presidents bothering you. You name it. What drink are you grabbing? Is it a cocktail? Is it a beer? And be specific. What is the drink of choice for Jim Honochick after a long week?
Bourbon Manhattan, preferably with something from Buffalo Trace Distilleries. Blanton's would be great.
Sure.
That's good straight up. But anyway, Bourbon Manhattan, up and sweet. And by sweet, a little extra vermouth and a little Luxardo cherry juice in there along with the Luxardo cherries.
I'm not going to get into the weeds. I think we take our Manhattan slightly differently, but I think we are both big fans of the Manhattan.
Yeah, it's after a tough week and a Friday night, that's perfect.
All right, now pick a restaurant, and it doesn't have to be Notch. I mean, you're going to get in trouble if you don't pick Notch. But it's Saturday night now, and you're feeling relaxed, and you want to go on a nice evening out with friends. What's your go-to restaurant in the Valley?
Interesting. You mean besides White Orchid?
Yeah, besides White Orchid.
Okay.
Our sponsors appreciate that, though.
I understand. I'll tell you a place we used to love, and there's just so many. You know what? It's really a tough question because there's so many great restaurants. Molinari's on the south side of Bethlehem, great Italian food.
Did they close down?
They did, and then they were open. I'm not sure where they are right now.
I think they were in limbo, but I think they closed down permanently.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
3501 on the west end of Allentown. White Orchid, as I said, great Thai food. And that's Ewell's for seafood.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. One more then.
Thank you.
Best concert that you have seen in the Valley.
In the Valley.
In the Valley. I won't divulge about the time I went to see Alice Cooper and got pulled over and got my first ticket ever.
Yes, and I remember the phone call. And I appreciate the phone call.
Uh-huh.
The best concert in the Valley? Oh, man, that's a great question. I'll tell you my first concert in the Valley.
Yeah.
Electric Light Orchestra at Lehigh County Community College in 1971 or 72.
Wow. Were you 12 years old?
Yeah, it was in grade school. I was literally.
Uh-huh.
I was in grade school. Graham Nash at Steel Stacks was great. He's a great storyteller. Really love that. And again, I'm trying to just limit it to ZZ Top at Ag Hall in the 1970s. My hearing is still not right after that. Just
That's good. That's good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I that was taking it up a notch, brought to you by Notch Modern Kitchen in Allentown. And I want to give a special thanks to them, obviously, but a special thanks to you, Dad. This was great. You have been truly a role model for me, both personally and professionally, and so having you here as the first guest is extra special to me, so thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, and this was YMI Talking. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the YMI Talking podcast. If you enjoyed this and want to hear more content from amazing personalities in the Valley, please subscribe, leave a rating, and drop us a quick review.